Hey y'all, in today's video, we're going to be talking all about English language arts. Let's dive in. First of all, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Kaela. I'm a second generation homeschool mom, meaning I'm a homeschool graduate turned homeschool mom. I'm currently homeschooling my fourth grader and my first grader. I also have a toddler, and baby girl number 4 is on the way, due in April. We are in our 6th year of homeschooling, and on this channel, I love to chat all things homeschool. I love to share resources and curricula with you guys, specifically secular or neutral resources. And I also just love to chat all things mama life. So if any of that interests you, I hope you'll consider sticking around and subscribing. Okay. English language arts. 3 simple words, but they carry so much weight with them because of all of the things that are included under that umbrella of language arts. So I want to chat with you guys about what exactly is included when we are talking about English language arts. We'll talk about some options we have as home educators when we're looking to teach language arts in our homeschool, how to address all the little moving bits and bobs under that big umbrella of language arts. And then I'm also going to share how I personally schedule out a week's worth of language arts lessons. I specifically want to talk about scheduling out all of those different components in a way that's not going to overly exhaust or fatigue your kiddos. I will have timestamp chapters so that you can jump to a specific part of the video, and I will also include some helpful links for you guys in the description box, so be sure to check that out. So first things first, what is English language arts? If you're new to homeschooling, you might be going and looking at curricula and resources to use, and you might see like some things are just called language arts. Some things are more specific, like a spelling program or a grammar program. What exactly do I need? What is language arts? So really, when we're talking about language arts, there are 4 main components that we're looking at under that umbrella. And then each of those components can be further broken down. The 4 main components are listening, reading, speaking, and writing. So at any given age or grade level, those are the 4 components that we're looking to address with our kiddos in our homeschool. And we're looking to build those skills in each of those 4 areas incrementally as they progress, as they mature. There's a great little pie chart of how those 4 components can be broken down even more specifically. Obviously, we're building skills incrementally and slowly. The components that you're going to be addressing in language arts are going to change and grow year to year. It's not always going to look the same. You're not necessarily going to need a spelling program, a grammar program, a reading program, a writing program, a handwriting program, etc., for every year, every grade level that your child is homeschooling. So if all of it sounds really overwhelming, take a deep breath. Just remember, we're only doing a couple of these components at a time in any given school year. If you're wondering, what language arts skills should my child already know? Or what language arts skills and components do I need to teach for this school year, this grade level? I will give you a couple of great places to start. The first one is this book. I love this book. I literally don't even put it back on the shelf. I just keep it on my desk all year round because it's one of my favorites to reference throughout every school year. It's called Home Learning Year by Year. This book literally takes you through each grade level of home education, each school subject for each grade level. And it gives you a scope and sequence of what needs to be taught in each of those subjects for that school year. She shares the specific skills that you're looking to build or teach in that grade level. And she also shares some recommended resources or books that can help you navigate how to teach and address those skills. It's just incredibly helpful. And honestly, I feel like every homeschool parent should have this book in their house just as a reference point and as a starting point. Another great starting point and super helpful guide is the core knowledge sequence. Now, this doesn't go all the way through high school, but it does address kindergarten through 8th grade. I have the PDF version downloaded on my computer. This is a free resource that you can get online. And again, it does take you through grade level by grade level and then subject by subject within that grade level, showing you what skills are expected to be taught, practiced, mastered, and even some of the content that their particular curriculum, the core knowledge curriculum, is teaching over the course of those years. Core Knowledge also has a great series of books that I have not personally used or read, but I know a lot of moms swear by them. And they have one for each of those grade levels. They're the What Your Blank Needs to Know series. So, like, what your kindergartner needs to know, or everything your first grader needs to know, and so on. Like I said, I don't own those books. I haven't used them myself, but I've heard really good things. So if you're looking for a place to start from scratch, it might not be a bad idea to grab one of those books for the particular grade level that you are shopping for. I will have all of these resources linked for you guys in the description box. If anybody has any other great starting point resources, please drop them in the comments and share. So what are our options for teaching language arts? Well, depending on the grade level that you are starting in, you could go out and get an all-in-one big box curriculum. There are lots of programs out there, both online and the kind that send you physical books, that will address all of the different language arts components, or at least attempt to. You can definitely go the route of an all-in-one language arts program. And in fact, for people who are brand new to homeschooling, that might be the best idea. Just to be able to check that box and know that at least for the short term, most of the language arts components are going to be taught and addressed. And that will give you time to get your feet wet with homeschooling, get some more experience, get some more confidence, and also look into other options if you need to, if you desire to. It might also be a good opportunity for you to assess where your child is with some of these different language arts skills and components. Children don't typically learn all of these skills at the exact same rate. So you might have a child who's very advanced at reading, but they really struggle with spelling or writing. So if you've just taken your child out of public school, you're going to be home for the first time, definitely consider giving yourself some time to work with your child, perhaps go that big box curriculum route and sort of assess their needs, and then do some further research into additional resources, supplemental resources, or just completely different options for addressing some of those more specific needs and concerns that your kiddo might have with language arts. Another option for teaching language arts, and this is really the route that I have chosen, is to select individual resources for each of the language arts components without getting them all from the same curriculum publisher, without going the big box curriculum route. Now, you might wonder, why would I do that when I can just buy one set of language arts for the whole year and it will teach everything that my kid needs to know? The reason that I haven't gone that direction is because I've yet to find a curriculum publisher that does everything really well. Think about it like a restaurant. The restaurants that have menus that are like 20 pages long and they have an enchilada plate and a Reuben sandwich and, oh yeah, spaghetti too. Usually those are not the restaurants that are going to have really tasty food. Typically, if you want really good Italian food or really good Mexican food or really good Indian food, you're going to go to a restaurant that has mastered that culinary niche, that area of expertise. And I feel like it's really the same with curricula. There are experts out there who have really mastered specific niches of language arts. They have really figured out how to teach composition, or they've really figured out how to teach the mechanics of handwriting, or they've really discovered a unique and fun way to teach grammar. And I just personally find that our experience in our homeschool has been so much more satisfying when we're using those sort of specialty resources to address specific areas under the language arts category, rather than a giant workbook, giant textbook, or a big box curriculum that is supposed to address everything, but usually feels like it's lacking in one area or another. Also, I will be the first to admit, I'm very picky when it comes to curricula and resources. I want to make sure that the programs that we're using are research backed or at least agree with the research behind the science of reading, the science of literacy, the science of how children learn these skills. I want our resources to be designed by experts who are going to hold my hand through the process of teaching these things that I am not an expert in. I also want to use language arts resources that are going to give me a little bit of flexibility as far as how I schedule them and also how I implement them. I want to be able to choose the books that we read. I want to make sure that we're exposed to a diverse and inclusive group of authors, to a lot of different variety of literature. I want to dive into the classics with my kids, but I also want to read all of the new and amazing books that are being created right now, because we're living in a golden age of literature. So yeah, I'm picky. And I haven't found a big box language arts program that checks all of the boxes for me personally. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily bad programs or that you shouldn't use them. It just means that for me personally, I'm looking for very specific ways to address all the different language arts components in our homeschool. Which leads me to, what are we using for language arts and how do I schedule it out? If you want to see the curricula and resources that we are using in our homeschool, go check out my playlists. I do have a playlist all about language arts. I also have playlists for each grade level that we have homeschooled thus far. And those videos go over the specific resources I selected for that grade level for all school subjects. I will link the most recent curriculum picks videos for 4th grade and 1st grade in the description box so you can see what we're using this year. And now I'm going to flip the camera around and show you guys what this looks like in real life. So first things first, I always like to have a really solid plan for all of the different language arts resources that we're going to be using in any given school year. This is my gorgeous minimalist homeschool lesson planning notebook by School Nest. I have at least one video all about this, maybe a couple, but I absolutely love this planner. I'll have it linked below in case you are looking for one. She does have several different cover designs, but this one is my favorite. It's gorgeous. One of the things that she includes in this planner are these curriculum overview pages, and I definitely take advantage of them. So I have a page for each of my daughters here. I have my 4th grader and my 1st grader, and I do color code them. I apologize if this ink color doesn't look the greatest on camera. So in our homeschool, language arts and math are really the only two subjects where I'm teaching my kids individually one-on-one. Most of the other subjects that we're covering in our homeschool, I try to incorporate both kids together and do them kind of family style. But with language arts, they're either working independently or they're working with me one-on-one. So I have all of the different components that I wanted to address with my 4th grader: reading, spelling, grammar, composition, and vocabulary. And then for my 1st grader, I have reading, spelling, handwriting, grammar, composition, and then also vocabulary. Now, as I'm going through my planner and I am planning new weeks of lessons, I didn't really want to have to constantly come back to these and reference them. So I actually made myself these little cheat sheets. And these are probably going to be easier to show up on camera. So just on index cards, I have a little cheat sheet for my 4th grader and my 1st grader. You'll see at the top, I wrote ELA skill rotation. That's because I know if I tried to address every single one of these language arts components on each day of the week, it would burn us out. It would take our entire day. My kids would be exhausted. I'd be exhausted. It's just not feasible or possible or wise for me to even attempt that. So I jotted down a list of sort of the various language arts things that we are focusing on for 4th grade. And I want to make sure that I'm touching each of these things each week, but not necessarily each day, if that makes sense. So I want to make sure that our pencil to paper work is sort of spread evenly throughout our week so that they're not having to do too much physical writing every day. I don't want them to become fatigued. I don't want them to be complaining that their hands are cramping up. The other side of this is that not all of these components have the same priority level. Some of these things need to be touched daily or at least, 2 or 3 times a week for us to be able to continue to make progress with them. While other components we could touch once a week and that would be sufficient. Typing, for example. My kids don't need to be doing typing every single day. I don't even have typing on my first grader's list, but she has also started typing lessons this year. Typing is definitely an important skill, and I want my kids to be proficient at it. But they don't need to practice it every single day in order to build that skill. I would much rather invest our time in making sure that they're reading every day and that they're doing some sort of writing every day versus a typing lesson on the computer every day. So having these lists just serves as a reminder and a reference for me as I'm scheduling out our week, what various aspects I want us to touch on. So let me show you what that looks like. I have a row for each of my girls that is meant for their core subject work, which is typically math and language arts. So this first row is for my first grader and the second row is for my fourth grader. I'm just going to kind of show you guys what a typical week could look like. So maybe for history, we're starting a new unit on Monday. Every time we start a new unit with our history program, we need to be pulling out our Usborne Encyclopedia of World History and doing some reading. We usually have a chapter that we need to read, and we might have some map work. And then on the next day, we might do our history hop, which is another chapter basically that we're reading. And usually there's a coloring page that goes along with that. And then they will do some copy work or some writing that goes along with their coloring page as a way to sort of narrate and review what they've covered so far in history. And then by Wednesday, we're usually mostly done with our history lessons for the week. We might just do a review, and that's going to involve some narration as we go over the review questions, and that's more of like a verbal oral review versus a written narration. And then on this day, when we're basically wrapping our history for the week, this is when I'm going to start bringing in our science for the week. So we would have reading, our assigned science content, and worksheets for our science. And we typically have that at least 2, maybe 3 times. And then by Friday, I'm wrapping my science for the week with a demo, which is like a hands-on experiment. So we're talking about language arts. Why am I filling in history and science? The reason is there are components in these lessons that are also requiring a lot of physical writing, manual pencil to paper work. I want to make sure I have those things mapped out as well when I'm scheduling their individual language arts work. Because, for example, if my first grader is having to label a map, then I'm not going to also have her on that same day doing spelling, handwriting, copy work, because that's just going to really exhaust and fatigue her. So it's important for me to see where the most manual writing is happening across our week. So since on Monday, I know she's going to be labeling a map, I might make that a day where we are focusing on our phonics instruction with all about reading level 2. And then maybe all she'll have that day is all about reading and math, because I know later on that day, she's going to be doing more manual writing with our map work. And then on this second day, when I know she's going to have copy work to do, again, maybe I'm only going to do phonics with her, because that won't require her to actually be writing. Usually with our phonics lessons, she's building words with tiles or she's telling me what letter to write on her dry erase board. And so I can kind of scaffold in that way for her, meet her where she is, so she's not having to do everything pencil to paper. Now, on the third day, we don't have any writing for history. So this would be a good day for her to do her handwriting book, and then maybe a typing lesson too, and her math, of course. We try to do math at least 4 days a week. And then on the fourth day, now we can bring in some spelling, and I might have her do some additional copy work for what we've covered in science. So this is kind of evenly spreading everything out. She's getting 2 phonics lessons a week, which I find 2 to 3 phonics lessons a week is a pretty good pace for us. Sometimes she'll end up doing 2 lessons on each of these days. So that's 4 phonics lessons. She's getting her handwriting practice. She's getting her spelling. She's getting her typing. She has some composition practice. So we're touching all of those language arts skills for her, my first grader, but in a way that feels really gentle and doable. And none of these days in and of themselves are going to be overwhelming or asking too much of her. With my fourth grader, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I want to be spreading out how we're touching each of these components. I don't want her to feel overwhelmed. But at the same time, I can ask a little bit more of her because she is older, right? So with my fourth grader, labeling a map is not going to completely wear her out. She's capable of doing some more pencil to paper work that day. However, since it is a heavy history day where we're doing a lot of reading and research, I don't want to give her a language arts assignment that's going to require a lot of mental energy. So I might do something a little bit more simple, like her spelling workbook, which she can do independently, doesn't take a lot of time. And usually with my fourth grader, anytime she's pulling out her spelling book, she's going to go ahead and do 2 pages because it's very easy for her to knock out 2 pages. The spelling program that we use has a worksheet for every single day of the school year, which means technically they should be doing 1 spelling page per day or 5 per week. I don't use it like that. I have my first grader touch it once or twice a week, and I have my fourth grader do 2 pages in it a week, and I just pick the most challenging pages for each weekly unit, and it works well for us. So don't be afraid to modify the resources and the curriculum that you are using to make them work better with your schedule, with your lifestyle. You can still address each of these language arts components without overwhelming your kids with a stack of bookwork every single day. Another thing that I might have her do this day is her vocabulary notebook. I already have that pre-filled with words for the entire school year, so she can easily pull that out, look up the word that's on her next page, and do that independently. She's looking at the definition of the word. She's creating a sentence that has the word in it. She might do copy work that has the word in it. She's looking up the etymology of the word if necessary, and then she puts all of that down in her vocabulary notebook. Both of these language arts components she can do independently on her own. And then, of course, she'll have math, and then she'll join us for our deeper history lesson as a group. It's also really helpful for me to know that she has independent work on the days where I'm doing a phonics lesson with her younger sister, because this takes more one-on-one time from me. I have to sit down and physically do the all about reading lessons with my first grader. So on the days where I know I'm going to need to sit down and do some extensive phonics work with little sister, it's helpful to give big sister work that she can handle on her own. I know she's not going to need to ask for my help. She'll be able to knock these out completely on her own. And that buys me that one-on-one time with little sister for us to really focus on phonics instruction. So on day 2, again, I'm doing phonics with little sister. We have a slightly lighter lineup with history. So it's going to be very similar to day one. I can have my fourth grader do typing independently. I'll probably have her work on a write by number assignment, which she can do relatively independently. And then again, math. Now on day three, we're kind of switching because my first grader has some language arts work that she can do independently, her handwriting book and her typing lesson. So this is a good opportunity for me to dive in with some more one-on-one instruction for my fourth grader, since my first grader won't really need me as much. So this would be a day where I would want to do Michael Clay Thompson with my fourth grader. We are reading Building Language Together. That's a vocabulary component. And I typically like to spend, around 20-30 minutes with her reading a portion out of that book. There's usually some kind of writing assignment that goes along with what we read. And so if there is a writing assignment, she'll do that as well. And then, of course, she'll have math. She'll have our history review with us as a group, and she'll have science with us as a group. On day 4, we don't have any history. We are continuing with our science unit as a group. And my younger daughter, again, has work that she can do mostly independently. So, for example, we can do a more in-depth write by number writing assignment. I can also assist her with a Lit House writing assignment. These writing assignments tie in directly with our history units. So this kind of acts as an additional review for her to go over the history content we covered that week and also get some writing in that's themed around the history. And then, of course, she'll have math. I also have this row here that I call group language. And so the language arts things that my girls cover together are Beowulf's grammar. And then also we have Spanish lessons that we do together. So that is what I use this row for here. I'm trying to touch Beowulf's grammar twice a week and Spanish twice a week. That's my goal. So let's just say we do Beowulf's grammar on our first 2 days. So my first grader is getting reading, phonics instruction, and grammar instruction on these first 2 days, while my fourth grader is getting spelling, vocabulary, writing, typing, and grammar on these first 2 days. And then over here on Wednesday and Thursday, those can be our days for Spanish. I also have a row here that is for art, literature, and miscellaneous. This is where I will keep track of our family read aloud or any additional, seasonal picture books or library books or just any literature that we're covering as a family, as a group will go here, as well as our art lessons, artist studies, music, anything like that goes in this row. Now, on days where I am doing heavy amounts of reading aloud for our history lessons, like this Monday and this Tuesday, I'm not going to do a group read aloud unless it's an audiobook, but I'm not going to be doing any reading aloud in addition to that, because that's just too much for me. That's too much for my voice. In science, we also have assigned reading, but we typically take turns and share that load. Our science texts are easy enough that even my first grader can read them aloud most of the time. So I'm less concerned about ruining my voice on those days. So those would be good days for us to do our family read aloud. And like I said, if we have a particular book that we're listening to the audio version, this becomes, less of an issue, and I could have some audiobook on each of these days. But just for the sake of being realistic, if it's a book that I'm actually having to read, I like to schedule it around other intensive reading days for myself. I am really trying to keep Fridays open for lots of extra enrichment. So I don't typically want to schedule math and language arts and sort of the core book work for Fridays. I like to do our science experiment. That's pretty time consuming. It's hands-on learning. It can be messy. It takes time to set that up at the dining table and then clean it up afterwards. So I like keeping Friday for mainly focusing on getting that done. If there's any additional crafts or hands-on activities that I want to do that week that say go along with our history lessons, Friday is the day that we would do it. So I might just write hands on Friday. And then Friday is also going to be the day, if we do a formal art lesson, that we do that. Because again, messy, fun, playful, that's what I like to keep Fridays for. So I don't want to assign any core book work to my kids on Friday. If they need this time to catch up, if they haven't quite finished all of their assigned work for the week up until this point, then by all means, we can use Friday for that. But my intention is always to save Friday for the fun stuff, so we can have fun Friday, so to speak. And then we might also do more of our read aloud or audiobook or whatever we have going on in our group literature. So this just gives you an idea of what a week can look like. We're addressing all of the components for language arts for first grade and fourth grade, but we're doing it in a varied and spread out way. No 2 days are going to look exactly alike. My kids really thrive with that type of routine. They like not doing the exact same lineup of bookwork every day. It keeps the week more interesting. It keeps their workload a little bit lighter on a day-to-day basis, and it helps them not get super exhausted or bored or just tired of one type of work, one type of activity. Every week looks a little bit different, but this is a general idea of how I plan them out. All right, y'all, I really hope you found this video to be informative and helpful, or at the very least, entertaining. Thank you so much for spending some of your valuable time with me. If you have any questions about anything I shared in this video, please leave them in the comments below. I'd also love to hear, what are your favorite language arts resources? Or are there any areas of language arts where you feel like you still don't have a good handle on things? Or maybe your kiddo is struggling and you're looking for a resource to specifically address that area of language arts? Go ahead and drop that in the comments too. Let's help each other out and share some great resources. I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye for now.